time to record all those epic skits I planned for this review. Well, shit. Roll for initiative, World Wide Web. I'm Dr. Shado, the internet personality with 12 charisma. How well you speak adds to the score. Anyway, after far too damn long, I have finally got my hands on the third Dungeons & Dragons movie, The Book of Vile Darkness. Or as it says on my copy, Das Buch der Dunklen Schatten. This entry in the series was a direct-to-video production released in the UK in 2012. The distributor, Zinc Entertainment, eventually got to releasing it in other countries later, such as the US, in 3.5 months. My problem is I wanted it on Blu-ray, and my options there were French or German. It's times like this I'm really happy that I rip my movies and don't have to worry about region lock bullshit. But anyway, what exactly is the Book of Vile Darkness about? Strangely enough, the story is focused on the Book of Vile Darkness. Well, sort of. They treat it kinda like Dracula in Castlevania 2. It's split into many parts and has to be recreated so that it can be defeated. Or just used to usher in hell on earth, considering this plays out a lot like an evil campaign, as all the characters have hearts black as night and own stock in Bank of America. I mean, there is this one paladin, but I mean, if you actually liked paladins before, well, anyway, let's take a look at the Book of Vile Darkness and roll a will save versus insanity. The movie opens up with a kinda sorta brief history of the Book of Vile Darkness. Kinda sorta because evidently this story begins halfway through someone else's campaign, after the book managed to corrupt, like, everything, and a group of players consisting entirely of paladins killed the fuck out of it, which led the forces of evil to split the book into 3 parts and hide it from the forces of good.
The ink was discovered and destroyed, but the cover and pages were never found.
Not to question the Lords of Evil or anything, but what's the point of safeguarding the pages after you extract the ink? I know the pages were actually flesh and the ink was actually blood, but just saying here, you don't safeguard the Mona Lisa by separating the frame, the canvas, and the motherfucking paint. The point is, blood ink destroyed, so the Knights of the New Sun figured, it's been 1,000 years, it's cool, and that's that. At least that's what the opening says, except as soon as we're past that...
Hello! We are here tonight on the eve of the oath to renew our pledge of service.
We find the knights have continued their ceremonies and duties. Someone really should have told the narrator. Either way, this is Ranfin, played by Anthony Howell. You might recognize him as the voice of Samuels from Alien Isolation. Here he leads the ceremony appointing his son, Grayson, played by TV actor Jack Durges, as a new knight of the new sun, the Knights News of Knights. Fuck. Anyway, he takes his pledges.
To defend the weak and show mercy to the wicked.
And I thought paladins were supposed to smite the wicked. Mercy, Grayson. We would rather have you be ineffectual than a dick. Other than that, it's the usual stuff. Be lawful good. Like, oppressively lawful good. And you can receive Pelor's blessing. That being the blessing of a neutral good god, which seems a little strange, but never mind. Raise your medieval sword and be blessed. Budget cuts. Just pretend Pelor's blessing is raining down. Actually, this is taken as visual proof that Pelor's blessing has not been granted to Grayson. This shouldn't be too surprising, as it turns out nobody has received said blessing in 8 centuries.
You thought it would be like the tales you've heard since you were young. The power of Pelor streaming into you from the obelisk. Yes!
But, mind if I point out a little issue here? It is not uncommon for gods in Dungeons & Dragons to respond to ceremonies at certain times of day. Certain gods, it's a little easier to figure out when they'd prefer than others. For instance, Pelor, the god of the sun, probably doesn't care too much for ceremonies held at midnight. Grayson, however, thinks it's because, like all other fucknuggets that make up the Knights of the New Sun, he didn't receive the blessing because he's just not cut out to do this.
If you want to be a knight, act like a knight.
Play the role. Think of it like a game. Some kind of role-playing game. No time for that now, for the forces of evil suddenly attack. No, I didn't leave out some kind of build-up to that. Just suddenly, boom, random encounter. I guess even the Dungeon Master doesn't care much for the talky bullshit in the game. This is a band of barbarians, barbarically using magical spells to beat the ever-loving fuck out of the knights of the now dead. Except for Grayson, who they merely assume dead after lightly scratching his brow. Can't blame him if he fainted from it, but the thing is that's not what's bothering him upon coming to.
Father.
After the barbarian horde tore through there and killed everyone in sight, except him, they either took his father or banished him to an alternate plane of existence. You can't really be too sure in this game. This is enough to give Grayson the will to go forth and save him, with one last call to Pelor for his blessing, which goes unanswered, so fuck it, it's not like he's watching or anything. May as well stop off at a whorehouse first thing.
Close the door. You can take your clothes off behind the curtain.
I just want to talk.
It's your money.
I know it's really an investigation and all that, but still, you're really not putting your best foot forward to this whole paladin thing, Grayson. Thing was, on his way here, he noticed the barbarians that slaughtered his co-workers were leaving, and asked the prostitute Carlotta, played by Charlotte Hunter, who they were and where they were going. To buy her assistance, he offers to trade the solid gold symbol of Pelor he got to spare.
Means nothing to me anymore.
Really not paladining very well. Matter of fact, the whore does a better job respecting the gods, as she turns down the money to simply do the right thing and help him exact revenge on the evil barbarians that she just had an orgy with. Point of the law is they go down to the local adventurer's shop to upgrade Grayson from his yarn mail to something more substantial.
I'll take that ring of force, a bag of holding, a wicked blade, and that knight armor. Carlotta, can you count this?
Where did you get all that gold?
The knights collected it for me.
A likely story, but I couldn't help but notice that in that part, nobody's mouths were moving, which means they shoehorned those lines in later. Which tells me that either the prostitute paid for that out of her own pocket, or before he set out on his epic quest for vengeance, Grayson was sure to loot all the corpses. Ever the concerned citizen, Carlotta adds some ground thistle root to his inventory, just in case this doesn't go as planned, and he has to poison himself to escape a life of torture. The shopping spree has somehow taken until sundown, or maybe it's just that evil districts are in perpetual night, but either way, this is the last we see of Carlotta as she bids Grayson good luck on his quest to walk in a bar and get hammered.
Ale. Dwarven.
I wasn't really thinking about it before, but now that you mention it, there are no dwarves in this movie. No elves, gnomes, halflings, nada. What the fuck are in those bottles? This is his way of blending in so he can listen for whichever group he's trying to follow. Doesn't take too long, as when you're discussing your quest to find ancient evil relics to set the world to evil for money, lowering your voice just doesn't come into the equation, revealing the important players. The assassin Bez, played by Barry Ard, the Kratos cosplayer Vimac, played by Habib Nazib Nadir, and of course the Shado Kai Witchok Rhodia, played by Eleanor Gex.
All of you. No mistake. The strongest adversary you have ever faced is before you.
Really? Now that might impress the peasants, but your fellow party members probably realize that prestidigitation is a level 0 spell. Either way, Grayson takes the opportunity to walk up and say, "Hey, I noticed you just threatened the lives of your friends. That sounds like money. I would like to take part in your adventure for said money." This introduces their opinionated Plague Lord Shifter, played by Kaloyan Vodinakarov. I swear, some of these guys have more interesting real names than movie ones.
Terror is the most valuable weapon. Is it in your heart to be terrible?
I'm a paladin in a bar joining an evil adventure from the advice of a prostitute. How much more terrible do you want? Specifically, they want him to murder someone. Don't worry about this being mistaken for him having to do something terrible, though, as their nameless fifth party member tries to kill him, and he ends up ending someone's life in self-defense, proving himself to the evil party without actually having to be evil. Therefore, the next day, they are on their quest for the horn and must conquer a dungeon and a dragon.
So if a dragon sleeps.
You know, there are spells for remote sight that don't involve shooting gore out of your face. And you could put an eye out with that. No, I have to say it does come off at times like the Dungeon Master's just being a dick. Design this whole intricate dungeon with traps and everything, but fuck spelunking, let's just have the boss monster rush out and jump the party. This doesn't end quite as bad as you'd think. Sure, it roasted some villagers earlier, but here it just uses its windy breath thing to stun Kratos while everyone else fumbles trying to defeat it. Predictably, Grayson is the one to make the last move that causes the convenient overhanging rock to crumble, killing the dragon, but no one else.
Dragon Slayer!
You all pitched in. I wouldn't think that an evil group would be so quick to shower praise on an individual, but whatever. Thing is, after they loot the dungeon, the group is disappointed that it was very lacking in treasure. I also don't know what the fuck is wrong with Grayson digging the survivors out, but he has an idea.
If we take these wretches back to Little Silver with us alive, they'll treat us like heroes.
These guys are pretty high level. I don't think you need to explain to them how quest rewards work. Indeed, they drag the few survivors back to town, and everyone is so happy to see them again, they let this band of grisly-looking, snarly heroes right in. This results in them taking advantage of the townsfolk in their own unique ways, and Akrodia deciding to thank Grayson for saving her life with a little visit back to her room at the inn, which gives Grayson the chance to sneak a peek through her little jewel to whom she is working for.
The apparatus is ready to extract the liquid pain, Lord Shathrax.
Father.
Which is the first hint we've had at all that his father is still alive. It's the first time the man's been brought up in, 40 minutes? It's like ever since he walked into the bar, he hasn't said a damn thing about him. No time to dwell, though, as Akrodia has returned, but seems to have misplaced her clothes.
You may ravish me however you see fit.
Oh, baby. We are gonna spend all night on Smash Brothers. Which is just about what Grayson tries to pull off, cock-blocking himself as best he can, until Akrodia threatens to leave his ass behind if he doesn't make with the dick. Thus... Her hands slip over your buttocks, and you feel her hips begin...
Skip over that part, you pervert!
This is very important to a fantasy adventure game. Now roll to maintain your erection. Oh! While everyone else was fucking around, Bez murdered the fuck out of a watchman and stole the town's treasure. The problem with this is that didn't go unnoticed, resulting in a standoff with the entire town ambushing them. I'd really like to hear what the hell a DM said to set up that one, but they know all their treasure has been stolen and are ready to kill the evil heroes to get it back. Grayson, ever willing to screw with anyone's plans, offers instead to return half the treasure in exchange for letting them go peacefully.
The next words you speak will be your last.
I'd rather have half with you than all without!
He killed the dragon!
Oh my, does that mean he cares about me? No one has ever cared about me before. Flutter, 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 flutter. Suddenly, Akrodia is willing to make a compromise, but then Shifter says, "Fuck peace, let's just kill everyone in the entire village." Amidst the chaos, Grayson slips off to find some children hiding in a tunnel and escapes the conflict to lead them to safety. This, of course, means no one can find him, which has Akrodia worried.
He's probably dead.
I'll catch up with you!
You're going to throw your life away for a boy. A human boy?
What the fuck other kinds of boys are in this movie? She's gonna spend a long fucking time waiting for some drow love. After finishing off the last of the townsfolk, she just screams at the gate until it shatters, making that whole standoff kinda weird, but what luck! Grayson was outside all along. And still shit.
Anyone foolish enough to pledge their life to a god that doesn't give a damn deserves what they get.
Worst paladin ever. But for being such a help to the party of evil, they let him have the Vorpal sword they looted from the town, without bothering to explain to the audience what the hell a Vorpal weapon even is. The plan at this point is for Bez to buy the horn with his share of the treasure and be on his way. For some reason they plan to do this tomorrow, as this yet again took all day to say, and we wind up with Grayson and Vimac having a lovely chat alone at night about how Vimac's going to take his share back to his home village, murder the fuck out of the people there, and start a new settlement as king. This calls for a toast.
Poison.
Man, this guy's a terrible paladin. What to do with the sudden dead guy? Not to worry. Remember the bag of holding they didn't explain to the audience? Well, as long as you already know what it means, this scene doesn't look too weird as Grayson stuffs the man inside the little pouch. Tossing the bag into the lake, he completely removes all trace of the killing. Except for the fact that both of them have tracks leading there, and Grayson's are the only tracks leaving the scene, but let's ignore that little detail.
Why don't we just continue with the task and then we can collect our reward from Shathrax?
Shathrax. I'm tired of hearing his name on your lips.
If you love Shathrax so much, why don't you just marry him? I really shouldn't be giving this DM any ideas. In the need to knock off ever more party members, Bez decides to change his deal to give him the horn or else he'll murder the fuck out of Grayson. Seems the man's been good at making friends though, as Shifter swoops into the rescue, summoning a little surprise. Oh, that shifter, always playing jokes. I'm dead. And there was this part where he was begging Grayson for mercy, and he denied it to the wicked man. But come on, was there ever any hint that the man was actually going to start following his code of ethics? Fuck, I'm surprised at this point that the symbol of Pelor under his armor isn't burning his skin. The 3 remaining party members make it to an unassuming evil little statue, which is where the horn from the dragon's dungeon comes in handy. It turns out that this is a secret location on the cover of the Book of Vile Darkness but just having the horn isn't enough. All that does is summon an undead child made of CGI to test their wickedness.
It suckles on the negative energies that birthed it. Malice, fear, kindness and compassion are deadly poisons to her.
Just think of her like a really small, remarkably honest politician. Unsurprisingly, the half-rotten bug-summoning Plague Lord passes this test with flying colors. Next up is Grayson, our holy paladin and knight of the new sun.
You've done bad things.
And he really, really sucks as a paladin.
You did it. Although I dare say you did it when you murdered Vimac.
Come on, you really not expect me to know? I see so much shit, my eyes come out of my fucking head. But whoopsie, Acrodia fails the test instantly as the undead child tastes love in her heart. Therefore...
Father! Kill them!
You didn't say that one. Now it's down to just Grayson and Acrodia. Fortunately, the man has this new shiny vorpal weapon, so a few hacks and stabs and they retrieve the cover of the Book of Vile Darkness. One teleportation spell later, and they reach the Mind Flayer who has set up this whole book club, Lord Shathrax, played by Svestin Hristov.
You have been instrumental in the events that will change Kyle forever. Your deeds will be legendary. Your name will live on.
And you are still a terrible paladin. But why do anything today that you can't put off until the next day? This gives some time for night to fall, and Grayson to infiltrate the fortress, tracking down the room where his father is being held captive.
My son.
My son?
Grayson, how does this Shadakai abomination know you?
Even after being held captive for weeks, tortured and bled dry, he still has the strength to chastise his child for their relationship choices. That's some next-level parenting skills. And that's nothing a little force field can't fix, so they must run! Eventually.
What has happened to my son?
Come on, Father, we must go!
I'm not going anywhere with you until you tell me what's going on here.
Yeah, he's arbitrarily holding them back and fucking up a perfectly good escape attempt, but you gotta admit, that is how you roleplay a paladin. Grayson gives his dad the long and short of it, that he pretty much went down that whole list of virtues from the opening pledge and broke every single one of them in order to reach in and save his life, and now they have to run. Problem is, when they were teleported, it brought them into a fortress way up in the clouds, so this whole escape thing was not very well planned out. Knowing that they have the pages and the cover now, Ranfin demands his son slay him so they can't use his blood as the ink. Because your blood disappears when you die? But no, he cannot do this. If his father and he shall die, then they shall die fighting against the forces of evil, side by side, hand in hand, to the sound of show tunes. This, weirdly enough, seems to be the trigger to actually receive the blessing of Pelor, the laziest motherfucking god in all the world, which pushes back the hordes of enemies with his splendor. Or at least the first wave. Yeah, it was holy light, divine powers, and all that jazz, but fuck it, I've got plot armor. And here we learn in a twist, this was Shifter's plan all along. Not only the fact that he isn't dead, but Grayson being the first knight blessed by Pelor in 800 years was exactly what they needed to remake the Book of Vile Darkness. You see, when the original book was made from the blood, flesh, and bones of the most evil person to ever exist, having to replace the ink means they need not the ink of the most evil person in the world, but the most holy. I'm sure it makes sense to the god of irony. So the ritual is on, and everyone gets to watch, even Acrodia. But the power of love calls upon her to teleport the symbol of Pelor back into Grayson's hand, so he can annihilate absolutely everyone there. Except Acrodia, because titties and tattoos. So, happy ending! And I don't know exactly how the hell he gets out of there, but at least he gets a woman that is wicked in bed. Or not, as when she offers him the chance to come with her for further adventures.
I can't. I must continue my duties as a knight of the new sun.
How boring.
You just wiped out most of the evil in the land with one hand and a little magical trinket. You have earned some Shadow Kai Poontang. It's not the worst thing you've done in the name of Pelor. Trust me. Anyway, that was Dungeons & Dragons 3, The Book of Vile Darkness. And it's pretty much just for fans of the game. While the first one simply failed to represent the game, and the second was done much like a game session explained for a lay audience, this time around it feels again like a campaign from Dungeons & Dragons, but without holding the audience's hand and explaining every tiny detail. This is both good and bad, because it doesn't treat the viewer like a moron, but on the other hand, if you don't already know what these things are, they don't give any hints whatsoever. For instance, the Bag of Holding. All we get is Grayson buying one by name, and then later he pulls it out to hide a body. That was everything that had to do with it. They never explained to people unfamiliar with the source material how the hell it worked like that, and they never used it in any other situation to let the uninitiated learn by seeing. It just gets used with the assumption you know what it is. Juxtaposing that is the fact that Grayson is simply a horrible paladin. True, a paladin who acts like a paladin would make for a pretty annoying character, but if you act like this guy in a game session, that's grounds to get your blessings lost and have to work extra hard to regain your patron deity's favor. Gods in Dungeons & Dragons don't work in mysterious ways. The God of Death is pretty straightforward. Overall, the Book of Vile Darkness comes off a lot like an evil campaign in D&D. While such things are very hard to play as the players are compelled to backstab each other at every turn, it does make for an interesting movie. The quality of the film is good, but it does leave those not already familiar with the game guessing at what the hell they just saw, so I feel it comes in at 3 dungeons that may or may not contain dragons out of 5. And yes, I know there was a Dungeons & Dragons cartoon series, but I'm not going to do that. I really don't think it would fit well in my show. I mean, how many titties and motherfucking chainsaw hands were in that anyway? Come on. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I've been Darker Shadow. And remember, if the Shadow Kai Witch is more good than you really suck at being a paladin.
What's to prevent you from sneaking away and taking it for yourself?
My word of honor.